So welcome on our second edition of Show and Tell event with Seedcamp. The agenda for today is we're having 4 amazing CTOs from very cool companies backed by Seedcamp and some other investors. All of these companies are looking to hire engineering talent, and you can see more information about in the expo area or at TechTree. But today, during that event, they won't be talking about recruitment. They're going to be talking about problems their businesses are trying to solve and technical challenges. As we believe, and we've heard it so many times from engineers, that you're getting a ton of messages from recruiters, and most of the time you don't know the company and you have no idea what the company is doing. So this time we're reversing the table, and you're going to have the CTOs, the creator of these amazing products, talking about what they're building and the challenges they're trying to solve. And my first speaker is going to be Alan Rockner, founder and CTO at Griffin, who's building a bank as a platform, and he's going to be talking about the challenges they're solving, etc. So you'll be able to welcome him at stage any moment now. Couple of useful things. So first of all, hey Alan, good to see you there. So a couple of useful things. So for us, this event is just the beginning of the conversation. So obviously, Alan will tell you as much as he can in 15 minutes, but we're encouraging you to reach out to Alan if you're interested in anything that he's talking about via chat functionality. We're encouraging you to connect on LinkedIn and ask further questions. There's going to be a small time for like 1 or 2 questions after Alan does his presentation, and we'll be super happy to answer these questions. But there's a high likelihood that Alan won't be able to answer everything. So over to you, Alan.
If you want to start the next Revolut or the next Anna or the next Tide, these are all like fintechs that want to move or touch customer money. Ultimately, you have to partner with a bank. Right now, you have to partner with one of the big banks like, NatWest or Clearbank or something, or Barclays. And uniformly, those are difficult to work with. It's hard to get a partnership set up. It's hard to get a bank account. It takes months. So we're building a full bank. We are in the middle of authorization, and at the end of that, we will be, digital API driven. So the technology stack is Clojure, Kafka, Kubernetes, Datomic, which is a Clojure database if you haven't heard of it. The kind of challenges we're facing are we're a bank, so we're holding customer money. So correctness and uptime are extremely important. We're building a system that can handle tens to hundreds of thousands of transactions at scale, and we have to do that without losing rights. And then we have to, for example, run that in multiple AWS regions. We have to have backups in multiple places. At that kind of scale, it's going to be hard to, you can't use a single database for that. Like you can't use just Postgres at that scale. So Monzo, for example, is using Cassandra. We're using Kafka. But then once you get to that scale, doing even simple things like consistent backups are hard. So, and then the other challenge is doing that with a small team. So we think we'll be authorized at the end of next year. We'll probably have 20 engineers at that point, and we'll need to be able to, one, have working bank code that is fast, reliable, performant. But then we're still a startup, so we still need to ship features. Some of the more interesting things we've written, we have an an open source version, or not yet open source rewrite of Terraform. We're calling it Genesis, like Star Trek 2. So it's the same basic idea of Terraform, where infrastructure is code, but the problems I had with it in the past were it's not actually code. Like Terraform is not a programming language. So I've written this as a closure library that you run at the REPL, and then you have variables and functions and namespaces and all of that good stuff. So it's not yet open source, but we will be open sourcing it. The other thing we've done is all of the whole backend is an event sourcing architecture. So everything that happens in the system is an event, which we represent as a closure map, and then we write that to Kafka. So then the entire backend are these little, we call them log processors. They're just little closure mapping functions that read an input event and then emit output events. But we're using closure transducers, if you're familiar with that, which are normally, like map takes an input list and you run a function on each item and return a new list. Closure transducers kind of abstract away the list to list part, so you can replace that with core async channels, which are like Go channels. And then in our case, we use Kafka. So our entire backend, we're using these pure functions. So like in our unit tests, it's not calling Kafka. It's not calling Kafka functions, so it's not going out to the wires, so it's extremely fast. We can test the entire backend using in-memory, data structures. I have this input event, my log processor runs, and then I should see these output events. So it's clean and fast, and it's nice. Other fun challenges. We talked about infrastructure. We talked about just being a bank. That's enough. The team is small, so we're currently about 5 engineers. We're planning on hiring 1 a month, basically forever. So that currently we're planning, 1 a month for the next 6 months at least, and we'll probably continue that pace for the foreseeable future. We are hiring for closure, and especially infrastructure engineering is important to us. We think most companies underinvest in DevOps and tools and builds and that kind of thing. And to be clear, this is a programming job that solves ops problems. So you can work on Genesis, our Terraform-like tool, and then also we just need lots of developers just to build the banking infrastructure. We are griffin.sh/jobs. We're hiring for front end, back end, and infrastructure, but especially back end and infrastructure. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. I definitely know there's one person in the audience that was looking up for your talk. Someone we know for a while, and he's actually a pretty experienced guy with significant experience with Kafka, etc. So I hope he'll found your talk useful. I don't see any particular questions. Like one from my side that I'd be sort of kind of curious about is maybe kind of like giving a bit more in terms of like how fast do you plan to grow, because obviously part of joining a VC business is that amazing growth experience. So that's one question for me. But there's before you answer that, there's one question from Ophelie Roux. Are you only looking for developers with senior profiles?
Not entirely. I would say we bias towards senior mostly because the problems we're solving right now are hard and we need to get through them quickly. We are still hiring junior engineers, but I would say like, one junior engineer for each senior engineer we hire. In terms of growth, yeah, we have just a never-ending amount of work to do. And like I said, we're planning on hiring probably one engineer a month forever, and that'll probably accelerate in a few years. Um, Banks are comprised of a large number of features you need. So you need a ledger, you need loan management, you need compliance. Um, in the future, we'll be doing like treasury management, credit cards, like um, invoice factoring, venture debt, like all kinds of things. So there are just tons of code to write. So yes, and we're still very early. The vast majority of what we're writing is greenfield.
Mm-hmm. There's one more question from Dmitry Kozlov. What feature are you missing in Terraform?
So I started this project about 2 years ago, and since then Terraform has added some, but it was things like, get this element out of a map and then put it in this other resource. And then, getting the nth item out of an array is just like things that are simple in your programming language frequently became painful in Terraform. And then things like, oh, I want a staging environment and a production environment. So then I need both environments to be the same, except for, the DNS names are different and the API keys are different. And so then you have to build a Terraform module. And I thought all those kinds of things were easier solved in a system with a real programming language. One thing we're doing that's kind of a bet, but I think it's paying off really well, is we're basically not using Bash. So the entire system is in Clojure. All the DevOps, all of the build tools, our Genesis stuff is in the same source tree as our source code. So then we can use, like the build process can look at the source code to say, oh, you need n of these log processors running. So, or you need for each namespace in the source tree, go build a log processor and deploy it as a separate Kubernetes pod. So I think they're really cool integrations you can get when your source code and your DevOps code understand each other.
An additional question from Dimitri, which I think is very fundamental to the existence of your business. Why banks are not interested to build these tools in-house?
Which tools?
I think he means the bank as a platform. Why there's a need for bank as a platform? Why would companies not build it themselves?
So the banks are mostly old school. Changing the compliance procedures and the risk model of an existing bank is very hard. Like Barclays has been around since 1670 or something. It's almost as old as the English Civil War. I think it might actually predate the English government from that perspective. They're running extremely ancient technology, and in changing the compliance procedures is hard. So a thing that we've seen over and over again talking to fintechs is that it'll take them 6 months to get set up with one of the big four banks. And that's after trying all of the others. Like Griffin, personally, it took us 6 or 8 months to get a bank account. And we're not allowed to continue using that bank account after we become an authorized bank. But for these fintechs, it'll take 6 months to get onto the platform. They'll have to pay £20,000, and then the bank isn't used to working with fintechs that have these extremely high growth profiles, and they're not used to dealing with. So the bank will offer you what's called a pooled account. So you might have, you get your 10,000 or your 100,000 customers. They're all living in the same demand account. So then that means you need to go build your own ledger to keep track of, my customer A and customer B's money. Even though they're living in the same demand account, I have to keep them separate. But then that also triggers the bank's fraud risk algorithms. So then what happens is the fintech will get these letters that says, you have been de-risked off the platform, and it took them 6 months to get onto the platform, but now they're getting 3 months to get off of it, and then they have to go repeat this process. So what we're doing differently is we are doing integrated compliance, and we're offering individual segregated accounts. So that means, I'll say Tide or Revolut or whatever. I mean, it's kind of the same idea. Each one of your customers would have their own bank account, and then Griffin will do compliance for that. So by law, you have to say, like if you've ever signed up for a Monzo account, where you take the selfie and you say, I want a Monzo account, and you have a picture of your ID. We will be providing that as a service for all of our customers. And we think that dramatically reduces the compliance risk for being a bank. So then that means we think we can onboard fintechs much cheaper, much faster. So yeah, that's probably a longer answer than I'm looking for, but I like talking about the business.
Yeah, no, I think it's just some great observations. And one more question, that's probably the final one. We won't have more time, from Joshua Eichler Summers. Is there any customer traction at the moment?
So by law, we are not allowed to offer banking services until we become authorized. That takes about a year, or it'll take a year from now. We're currently writing our regulatory business plan, which is something like 350 pages or something. It's a giant document that we'll submit to the PRA and the FCA. In the meantime, we are going to offer Ledger as a service soon. So the plan is to do that in about a month. And then in about another quarter after that, we'll do compliance as a service. And then after a quarter after that, loan management as a service. So we're starting to talk to customers now about doing that as a business model until we get authorized. But we have a lot of interest for those products.
Great. Cool. Thanks a lot, Alan. I hope this was an interesting presentation. I saw that in the audience we have several people from big banks who are software engineers at big banks as well. I generally encourage you to reach out to Alan and speak more about that directly. And I think that we're gonna be slowly moving to our next panelist, Piotr Cwieczkowski. So thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, it's been great to have you. And Piotr, you can now join the stage. So Piotr is a CTO at Stotles, and Stotles is a business, helping companies to supply their products and services to government, which, if anyone tried it in the past, is like extremely painful, and Stottle is a business who's trying to make it at least slightly less painful. So Piotr, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Pavel. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter. Pavel already introduced all the important info. I'm the CTO at Stotles, and at Stotles, we're helping businesses work and compete in the public sector. Today, I want to walk you through some of the challenges we're facing when building a global public sector database, and a couple ideas we have how to solve these challenges. But first, I want to give you a brief intro about Stotles itself and the actual problem we're solving. Not everyone knows exactly what types of problems companies are facing when they want to work in public sector. So I think that needs a bit of context. And then we'll dive deeper into the data engineering efforts at Stotles, what challenges we're facing, what are our solutions. The one technique actually that Alan already mentioned that we're also using is event sourcing. That's really helping us tackle some of these problems. And then in the end, I want to give you a bit of a taster of what's coming up for us. So I'm going to share some highlights from our roadmap. So our goal at Stotles is to help businesses and governments work better together. We realized that it's such a massive market. So here I have $9 trillion globally spent in the public sector. It's more than 10% of GDP in the UK. And there are so many opportunities to increase the efficiency and transparency of that market. Our goal is to be one-stop shop for any businesses that want to get into public sector or already are into public sector, where they can get all the information and services they need. Just a little bit about the team. We're very early stage. It was just the 3 founders a year ago. I joined almost exactly a year ago, but it's 9 of us right now, and we're still growing. We recently closed the seed round. It was super exciting for us. The announcement is coming soon, but the investors we're working with were early investors in Dropbox, Uber, Oculus. And we also have super exciting customers that we're helping them to get into public sector. Some of the big names that work with us are UiPath, Slack, Freshworks. All of that and much more about the company, a bit of a story, our mission and values is at about.stotles.com. So I encourage you to check that out. Just the team at a glance as it is today. It's 9 of us. We're bringing experience from lots of different industries, from Bloomberg, BCG, World Economic Forum. A lot of us had experience with public sector before. We're all super passionate about building amazing products for our customers and just tackling the really hard challenges that there are in the public sector. What excites me the most is that we'll keep growing and growing and growing. So this list will just become longer and longer with time. But before we go into the actual tech, this is supposed to be a tech talk, but I want to give you a bit more context on the public sector itself. I wanted to just introduce a couple of terms that I'll be using. What we call a procurement process starts with a buyer, which is usually a government entity, requiring some service or goods. They publish a tender in various ways. Companies, which we call suppliers, these are the private companies, then compete to win that work. So they send their bids. There is a process, there are some criteria based on which the buyer is choosing the right supplier. Some of this information is public. By law, buyers have to publish this. To compete in that market, private companies need relevant and timely data on what's available. Unfortunately, that's really hard to get. Each buyer might have a different website where they publish their data. The overall data is very, very low quality. So our customers basically have to figure out how to find the things they're interested in, then look at tens of different portals, web portals every day. It's really hard for them to find really valuable information. They constantly fear they're missing out on something, and their competitors might know about some tendering work they don't know about. What we realized is that if we aggregate this data, unify it, and provide actionable insights to our users, and basically change the way they access this data from a pool model, well, they have to go in and search for this data, we can push the right relevant information to them. That would be very valuable for them. The other thing we're doing is incorporating data sources they don't even know might be useful, like past spending of government entities or news articles. And all of that is available through an amazing product they will love. So government, in general, public sector tools are not the best tools available. They're very enterprisey tools, very legacy. So we want to build something they would really love to use every day. Because of all of this, working with data is really the core of what we do. Our goal is to build a comprehensive global database of public sector information. That database would consist of all the information about current tenders, awards, like I said, news articles, past government spending, and it would also contain all the buyers, the government entities, and all the private companies that work in that sector. The way I think about it is basically a graph of all those institutions and private companies connected through who does work with whom, who was awarded a contract, maybe which company is a competitor of another company, or which company partnered in the past or subcontracted for another company. The questions our customers want answers to is from the simple ones, what should I bid on today, to really complex ones like who are my competitors working with currently, and when those contracts expire and need a renewal, could I get in there and win those win this work? But that task is really not an easy one. Like I said, buyers have to publish some of that data, but it really varies, and the quality also varies based on the buyer. We realize there are a couple hundreds of data sources just in the UK, and we want to do this globally. Each of these data sources has their slightly different way to structure the data, even though it's in essence the same process. And almost all of this is typed in by humans. It's not even going through some what you you could imagine like a nice database, nice tool. Is basically lots of forms that are just typed in, or often typed in from a paper form. So the typos and mistakes are everywhere. I found this small sample of so many ways. So this is what we get before we process that data. So many ways to spell one government institutions here in the UK, even just making a typo in Her Majesty's part. But this is what we're helping our customers with. And like I said before, I'm gonna dive slightly deeper into one aspect of what we're doing. The challenge that we have is we have all these different ways to represent that data, from very simple, like 2 fields data sources where it's just a title and maybe who's buying it, to very, very rich, detailed descriptions of the whole process. We want to maintain that rich source data, but also be able to transform it into representation that works in the web app, representation that is really good for searching, representation that is really good for doing machine learning. What we realized is that in essence, we're modeling a well-defined real-world process. It's the procurement process. To be honest, it's pretty similar in all the places all the countries we've researched, and in some way it's similar. And it's very much event-based. The events would be tender was published, tender was amended slightly, or maybe a contract was awarded or a tender was cancelled. These things just happen and they stay like that. And for that, event sourcing is a perfect fit for us. The unified representation of these events is our source of truth. And based on that, we can project those event streams into any type of database we want, any type of representation we want. We can experiment with various databases very easily just by projecting event streams into various representations. The other thing that I like about that structure is that because we unify data on the event level, and it's very early in our pipeline that we convert the messy source data into our unified event model, it basically becomes the interface for any incoming data that we have. We've got quite a lot of scrapers and API clients for various of these data sources. They all emit unified stream of data, and thanks to that, we can share a set of tools that clean it, deduplicate it, then do some analysis. So all this messy data is very constrained at the beginning of the pipeline. The other thing that I really like is that when we show a record on the screen in the web app, we can actually go back to each event from various sources that constitutes that record, and then from that we can also go back to the actual raw source data that we used to create those events, which gives us amazing tools for debugging issues with data pipeline, but also increases our customers' confidence in the tool, because we can show them this is not Stotles doing something weird. This is actually weird data we got from the source. I could talk quite a lot about this, but please reach out if you have any questions about event sourcing or procurement or Stotles at all. Just like I said, just to highlight a couple things we're going to be doing. I mentioned just the basic model of the graph we want to build. We want to model all the government hierarchies that exist between HMRC and all the agencies that are below it. When two councils work together on a project, we want to be able to model that. When many suppliers group into a consortia to work to bid on a tender, we want to also be able to model that. The other thing is we want to be super creative with types of data sources we want to ingest. Like you see, upcoming budgets, job ads even for government workers, past government spending. All of that will build that one big database of global public sector. Obviously, what would work is like one thing I maybe didn't mention that much, but all the ML methods would work really, really well with that. Mostly natural language processing will be super important for us to really understand what that tender is about. All of that wouldn't make any sense if we didn't have an amazing product for our customers to use. So that's a really, really big part of what we want to do. We already have a great product that our customers are using every day, but we do believe we have so much more to do. Yeah, and like I said, we're hiring. I hope this gave you a good idea of what you could be doing at Stotles. If you like what you are hearing, I do encourage you to check out join.stotles.com. Reach out to me. I'll stick around for a bit here and hop in. Yeah, and thank you so much.
Hello again. So thanks a lot, Piotr. This technologically interesting experience of getting to the stage and off the stage. I found it fascinating. Like for me, and I've heard many stories about that. It's almost like some of the governmental units are essentially almost purposefully creating this type of mess when it comes to sharing things with mistakes, so they're found by only the contractors that they are preferred, etc. So I do believe that technology has a huge role to play in creating like a transparent way in which governments deals with the business, and I think it is a big issue. From your journey so far, like how difficult was it? So you've already, if I understand correctly, you've already started and you have customers, and how did you start that? I think you were facing this traditional sort of chicken and egg problem, as every business in this place. How are you able to move past that?
So I think the good thing for us in this market, it's almost like cliche, but it's very ripe for just introducing changes. The customers we're approaching, they want to get into that business, but the tools they see are not very easy to use, are pretty low quality. So when we came to them with something that's good looking, already gives them the exact things they want to do, they were super excited immediately. We started with very little coverage of the public sector, but we are growing and growing it. But just providing the couple basic tools, like helping them search and actually pushing the information to them and just freeing up a couple hours a day they would spend on searching various web portals, was such a huge unlock for them that, yeah, we didn't have that much problem convincing people that this is something they need. I think if I can add to one thing you said, I think the current situation with COVID was such a eye-opener for many people that the public sector has to be more efficient, and government being able to efficiently buy supplies or services is so important that many people are now saying that actually optimizing, making this this market more efficient is very important for the society, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks a lot for like really good and detailed presentation. Guys, if you have questions to Piotr, unfortunately, you need to ask him directly, because we need to rush a bit and start soon with another presentation. So Piotr, thanks a lot. Great presentation.
Thanks so much.
Cheers. And the next speaker is going to be Fergus Doyle, who's a CTO at Orbital Witness. It's a business that I had an opportunity to meet a while ago. Its founders, Will and Edmond, and I think this is for me this is a classic example of a business that doesn't sound like something exciting. So essentially, they're making due diligence of property easier, and they were helping with some of the biggest deals, and they're already used by some of the biggest law firms. But on the other hand, they're making the software. The aspiration is to make the software so easy to use that anyone who's buying a house or a property would be able to screen it for various risks, etc. Without the need of spending a huge amounts of money on lawyers and stuff like that. And the actual tech behind it is quite sexy, and that's what Fergus is going to be talking about. One of the things that is also important is that I think Fergus and Will and Edmond, they're very, very focused on growing very diverse engineering team. So they're also very keen to welcome people from very untypical backgrounds, etc. And so if what Fergus is going to say will change your mind about due diligence in property markets, then definitely reach out to him. Over to you, Fergus.
Thanks, Pavel. Can everyone see my screen okay? I will take silence as golden and take that as a yes. Great. So, pleasure to be here. My name is Fergus Doyle. I'm the CTO of Orbital Witness. I'd like to use the time today to talk through a bit more about the problem space, as Pavel was saying, that it's a bit atypical, and I see this as a bit of an iceberg problem where there's you might think that the legal process around property is relatively tied up, but there's a huge amount of complexity behind the scenes that we're tackling in the hope to really like kind of streamline the process and everything. So Orbital Witness, we're a prop tech legal tech. We operate primarily within property and real estate, but all of the vast majority of our customer base at the moment is in the legal space, law firms, in-house legal teams, that sort of stuff. We currently support the UK's leading law firms, including all of the Magic Circle firms, which are the 5 kind of most prestigious law firms. And our product provides a simple way for property lawyers, especially, to gather data and increase their understanding of complex issues relating to property transactions. We surface valuable insights that they wouldn't be able to gain otherwise, just from manually reviewing all of the paper documents. And there are very few tools that are kind of competing in this space to really be able to offer that level of value that Orbital Witness does. We've spent the last year primarily focused on the legal market, as I mentioned, where these issues are felt most acutely. They're dealing with kind of large, complex property transactions, whereas you or I might only kind of be exposed to residential. Buying a house, and that's a much kind of smaller subset of where some of this complexity and risk comes in. And with our recent seed funding, which we managed to close in the middle of the pandemic, which was a positive sign, we're looking to expand into other markets and start delivering these insights and more insights to other industries outside of the legal due diligence process. So I'd like to talk to you a bit about legal documents. Probably not everyone's idea of how to spend a Wednesday afternoon. But there are, so we have about 30 million registered properties in England and Wales. They are registered with HMLR, the land registry. And for those of you who do own your own property, you know the amount of paperwork that's involved in any sort of property transaction. You've probably got a box file with a couple of inches of A4 paperwork that's basically been reviewed by some solicitors, by some conveyancers. And the amount of documentation scales linearly with the amount of properties that are in a transaction. You don't kind of get economies of scale with more properties in a portfolio. And as you can imagine, that means that the complexity almost kind of scales exponentially, where you're looking for risk trends amongst different properties within the transaction as well, and cross-referencing documents and precedent within the wider portfolio. Commercial property is also typically more complex than residential because of the restrictions on use and the nature of the leases associated with those. So a single commercial transaction, like the ones that Orbital Witness is typically used for, might have thousands of properties within the transaction. And Orbital Witness was used in the largest real estate transaction last year, the acquisition of the Green King Brewery, which had something like 1,500, possibly a bit more. I think it was spread across a few different projects across England and Wales. So there's a lot of data to get your head around in a transaction of that size. And despite Orbital Witness's usefulness in that transaction, as of today, it's still impossible to get a really kind of clear top-level overview on a portfolio of properties, regardless of whether that's tens of properties or thousands of properties. Each of the titles within that transaction might have hundreds, if not thousands, of associated documents. And each of those documents needs to be manually reviewed by someone within the legal team. Some transactions are so large that you can't do due diligence on the entire portfolio, and you basically have to take a random sample of properties within that portfolio and extrapolate the risk out from there, and hope that you haven't missed any kind of major red flags. Just to kind of make matters worse, some of these documents have very, very poor data quality. Some of the documents themselves were filed in the 16th century. A lot of them contain what we kind of lovingly refer to as legalese within the documents themselves, which means that we actually are in the process of developing our own language model, because it's sufficiently different from models that are trained on standard English text, to be able to pick out the nuances within these documents. To give you an example, some of these documents have sentences that span pages with very little punctuation, which means that I can pretty safely say that no lawyer tried to read that all out in a single breath. And some of them have more double negatives in than you can shake a stick at. So trying to get an NLP model to accurately structure the text within that can be quite challenging, to say the least. And then on top of the documents themselves, then a lot of these documents are basically just scanned images. So there's no digitized content from within the documents. You might have scanning artifacts, you might have handwritten amends. On this example, you can see that there's crossed out date, which is kind of redacted from the document, but the handwritten date is important. Some of the documents are handwritten, written in cursive, which again doesn't tend to fare well with the majority of OCR engines out there. You might have scan rotation, complex column layouts, which impact the content of the documents as well. So that kind of brings us to what Orbital Witness is really in the business of, and that's kind of modeling complexity and risk property and real estate, and we're kind of left with this. What at least in my mind is a bit of a pyramid-shaped problem, where you have millions of data points that you need to kind of compress down into what might be considered almost a Experian credit score-esque value at the end of the day. And in order to do that, then you have to, take all of the raw inputs, drive those into kind of subsequent outputs, and then those outputs are used for further processing, depending on contextual information that will have an impact on how that information is consumed by the end user. No one's really done anything like this before. There's quite a big market for automated valuation models, for instance, with banks that are evaluating whether to lend against property. They will look at some very high level statistics around the property in question, such as the location or the price of the property, but they won't really base their lending decision on much more kind of granular detail than that. So really getting a clear understanding of what might be considered red flags or kind of essential risks that need to be surfaced to not only the lawyer but everyone involved in that transaction or in owning that property, then there's a clear need for that, and we see that increasingly not only from our legal customers but from the wider industry as well. And us being a lean startup, we want to kind of validate our assumptions and approach along the way as well. So just to call out a couple of kind of differentiating factors about how we go around kind of delivering against these challenges. We definitely operate as kind of true cross-functional teams, not only a product and engineering very kind of closely intertwined, but also data science as well. Data science is very much a core part of our product. So data engineers, data scientists work very closely with engineers, design, product on a day-to-day basis. We operate a dual track 6-week discovery delivery cycle, where our combined focus is split between scoping out the next set of objectives for bringing into the delivery cycle that gets queued up after the current one. And we're strong believers in a DevOps culture, where we ship early and often we'll release several times a week. There's a combined ownership around the product. It's not a case of different functions being responsible for different parts of the product. We are very much a kind of a whole team in tackling some of these challenges, and we've got, as has been mentioned, we're all looking to hire. We've got what I'd consider quite a refined hiring process, where we've got a couple of screens up front, a short coding exercise that's representative of the sort of work that you'd be doing within the team, and then that feeds into the technical component of the final interview bank, which is comprised of looking at technical competency, product, and also a chance to meet the co-founders that Pavel mentioned earlier, Will and Ed. We also have quite strong company values that I think are representative of the day-to-day culture within the business. There's a strong focus on humility. The irony of having an angel emoji next to humility is not lost on me, but we do. We're very recognizing of the fact that we don't have all the answers to the questions that we may have currently, and that's that's something that we're kind of very open to admit and look for help, not only internally but also externally. Kind of hand in hand with that, then we're very focused on empowering not only others within the team, but also our customers and our users and those outside of the business that we might be able to kind of positively influence and benefit. We take quite a bold and ambitious stance on delivering against our strategic objectives. So not only in terms of the sort of timeframes that we want to validate some of these assumptions around, but also around the scope of the challenges that we're really trying to tackle. And a bit of a quirky one that's based off of a Mark Twain line around avoiding procrastination on the big things that are going to move the needle. We're very much focused around biting off the big impactful stuff first. So I'm conscious that I've overrun slightly, so apologies for that. But I'll be in the expo section after this. Feel free to come find me or find me on social media or whatever. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions there.
Yeah, great presentation, Fergus. I think it had all the details. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. There's one question from Dmitry Kozlov, but you can respond to him directly or over chat via Hopin. So thanks a lot for a great talk.
Thank you.
And now we're going to welcome James Lafa, CTO and co-founder at Back. Hi, James.
Hey, let me share my screen.
Yeah, great to have you here. So Back, if I recall correctly, is slightly more down the line and a slightly bigger organization. So you're going to be able to tell people more about that. So without further ado, the stage is yours.
Let's do this. Hi everyone. So I apologize already for my French accent, but hopefully everyone will hear me and understand me. So yeah, we created Back a couple of years ago with my co-founder Christian. It's actually the second business we run together. We know each other for 6 years now. We wanted to solve one very specific problem, which is the following. What we realized is that more than 20% of workers' time is actually spent looking for any kind of help, asking questions to HR, to finance, to operations. And these teams are also spending a lot of time just basically helping employees on a lot of things that actually could be automated, and that's what we are actually doing. And all the service teams, so the example of HR is very often considered as a cost center. It's just a team that, they are here because we need them, when actually this team should be a strategic team. There's so much things that they could put in place to make the organization work better, being more efficient, the workplace being better as well. But for this, we need to free their time working on a lot of administrative things, and that basically add no value, just have to be done, and free their time for them to really work on the strategy aspect. So what we are building is a first automation operation platform. The goal is basically to automate all the internal processes of the company in a very easy manner, where they can basically define all their processes and we run everything for them. Very classic example that usually speak to people would be onboarding. So if you have a candidate that goes through all the different interviews and you decide to make an offer, there's a lot of tasks that have to be done by different people and different teams inside your company. So when you're gonna decide to hire this person, for example, HR will have to write down a contract, send it to the candidate, and make sure the candidate is signing the offer. The office team will have to find a desk and find, the room and buy all the necessary equipment for this person. The IT team will have to order a laptop for this person. And this usually is done by one person sending email to everyone, having some checklist when there's a lot of things that can be automated. Ordering a laptop is, for example, something that could be automated fully, meaning you could send a form to the candidate for him to select the different options. Do they want a Mac, a PC, a German keyboard, in our case, I'm in Berlin, or US keyboards. And this kind of option then on reception on the submission of this form, we could directly order this laptop online, tracking the package number. When this arrives, we automatically create the task for the IT team to prepare the laptop and making it ready for when the person arrives. And within our tool, all these processes are orchestrated, and you have very good overview, so you can see all the different steps. People can collaborate together, comment, ask for approval, and do all this kind of interaction that are necessary, but in a way that is very easy to understand and track the progress. So the way it works is basically we integrate with as many systems as we can within the organization. We started by the communication channel like Slack, Team, and email. Where any employee of the organization, without to create any accounts, it's just directly working with the bot that are installed inside the different communication tools. They can just ask any question. And then it goes through our automation engine, who's going to first try to answer this question. So if it's any question, for example, like what's the Wi-Fi password, what's the home office policy, everything that is connected to knowledge, we go through our knowledge base and the previous question that's already been answered. And if we can, we answer it directly. If there is no answer for this question, or if it's just more service type of request, meaning like if someone has to be relocated to another office in London, for example, that's nothing that is knowledge. Someone needs to make a decision, and there's a process that has to be started. In that case, we're going to create a request that's going to go in our system. It's going to be routed directly to the right team. It's going to be categorized automatically, and then the person within our tool working in this team. So let's say in the HR team, for example, we receive a new request, and then they're going to start working on it, and all the automation steps that can be automated basically will run directly. So now it's been 2 years that we started this journey, and more than a year and a half that the product is on production. It's used by many companies now. This is just some of them. Maybe, I don't know which one you know. Probably SoundCloud is quite famous. Personio also, Netlify, maybe you heard of it. So we have quite a few teams that are very happy with what we're building, and we actually have quite a few new names, but we can't reveal them yet. To give you an idea, I don't know how actually it sounds very complicated now that I look at it, but the way it works is, as I explained, we have this communication channel that usually are the place where the employee will create a request. Then it goes inside this automation engine. It's going to already apply a first level of automation, like answering automatically, routing, categorizing. This is written in Go and in Python. Basically, our backend is written in Go, and all the machine learning part is written in Python. We also have a workflow engine, which is where we run all the different steps and different internal processes. They are also connected with the different integration within the company, like Confluence, Personio, Bamboo, soon Jira, where the goal is to access the information within this system and using them to build the different steps of this workflow. And ultimately, we have the back application, which is where the service teams like HR, operation, finance, IT are basically seeing all the requests and working on them. In terms of challenge, so like today we have 4 integration, but actually we have many other integration that we need to build, which is always a challenge because we basically need to have a common logic between all this integration, not to make anything specific, but they're all different. So that's definitely a challenge to be able to cover all this different integration and having a process where we can build many at a fast pace, I would say. One thing that is also one of our challenges, basically this workflow engine needs to be as simple as possible. We always say we want to make it as easy as building as Lego. We don't want to have a customers having to, write down workflows in any kind of code. So that's something we're working on now. We're still working with them to build them, but the ultimate goal is to have a system where they can really make it very easy. And the entire app has always been built with this philosophy of making everything very easy for customers. We have very few settings. We really try to make the application as simple as possible. Multilingual problem as well. Most of our customers are using the app in English, but we also have to cover Germans. We also have some Spanish, which make the automation, which is usually NLP, harder problem. And probably one of the last thing also is every customer basically have different processes, have different way of doing things. HR team are not taking care of the same request in certain companies than in others. So meaning we usually don't have, we can't have like a simple model that works for everyone. Everything has to be customized for every single organization. But at the same time, we can't build a platform that has to be customized for every single organization because it doesn't scale. So we are basically, that's where we have this need to build something that is automatic but is capable of serving every single customer differently. This is our team. So we are now 16 employees and one dog, Emma. We actually hired the last person today, which is Tanya. I don't know, you probably don't see my cursor actually. So they are all the great people who build back. We are still, so we are not actively recruiting actually. All the really urgent position have been fulfilled, the last one this morning, but we are constantly interested in talent. So anyone who is a strong backend developer, ideally with skills in Go, a strong machine learning developer, or someone who can work on the infrastructure, we are definitely always interested in getting to know each other and see if we could be a match. Our office in Berlin, we are primarily working from Berlin, but we also have employees in Barcelona and London. So we are an office first in Berlin company, but we can work around that in case you're not in Berlin. Yeah, that's my email, james@backhq.com, if you want to apply or send me a message or anything. And that's it.
Thanks a lot, James. Really interesting, and loved the presentation. I think just trying to see if people have any questions, but I don't think so. So yeah, so I think thanks a lot for being with us today. Some really great talks, and I think for us it's, as I said, the beginning of a conversation. So I hope that for all the engineers in the audience, it was refreshing to be actually able to get to understand a bit more about the tech, because I think very much when companies are publishing things, they don't send anything about tech at all on their websites and other materials. If you can go to your chat function and events, my colleague Sam has actually posted some surveys that ask for feedback because we want to upgrade this format. Like, we know that recruitment in engineering is I don't want to say broken, but it's maybe not the most efficient and pleasurable experience for anyone involved. So I think we're definitely looking for suggestions and ideas and solutions to that, and would love to hear back from you. We're gonna post all the videos and presentations afterwards, so you can continue digesting it, reaching out to all the amazing companies that presented today, and I hope that you had a chance to learn some interesting things and insights, and like a virtual round of applause for our speakers involved, and thanks everyone for spending slightly over an hour today with us. I hope that was good food for thought. Thanks again, James.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fergus, Piotr, and Alan. Really great to spend time with you today, and that's all from us today. So thanks a lot.